STEMology, the Young Scientist Survival Guide, Session 14. Welcome back. You're listening to STEMology with Alina Adams. I've been looking forward to this episode for so long because having a mentor is something I never really realized I needed until I had one. It wasn't something I exactly set out to find, but has become a crucial component of my development. Just interacting regularly with a professional in my field has elevated my thinking. I've become more comfortable talking about science and answering and asking questions. And presenting my research and having ideas in a comprehensive way has been awesome. So I am excited to introduce my mentor, Dr. David Tung. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here and giving me some of your time.
Oh, thank you, Alina. Thank you so much for having me on.
So I introduced you a little bit. I guess I only said your name and that you were my mentor, but would you like to give a little more background on who you are and what you do?
Yes. I was trained as a medical engineer, and that's what I got my bachelor, master's, and PhD in. And after my PhD, I went and did a fellowship at the Department of Pathology of University of Michigan Medical School. It was a joint fellowship with the Park Davis Pharmaceuticals. So during that time, I did a lot of work in translational pharmacology, and after that, I basically focused my career in being a scientist in the translational pharmacology field. But apart from translational pharmacology, I've also done work in clinical operations, what they call CMC, which is chemical manufacturing and control. And that is basically manufacturing of drugs and also developing the manufacturing process and release testing assays. I also do some regulatory work, which involves the interaction of the FDA, etc. My Valley Discoveries is the translational arm of the Star Wars Institute for Medical Research. So the idea is we take any discoveries that the stars come up with, and we will take that out to the clinic and also eventually, hopefully, to the market. So I do a lot of clinical development work in my current position.
And that has been amazing to follow. I always love keeping up with where you are in your process. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to do that. I've learned so much already.
Oh, thank you. It's great having you in the team.
So this episode, I wanted to kind of explore the relationship between a mentor, my mentor, David, and I, what we took away from it, how to be a good mentor, how to be a good mentee, how to find one, kind of just go through the journey that we've gone through, and maybe you can pick up some tips here and see the kind of mentor that would fit you and your personality and the type of things that you can take away from that. Well, how would you describe our relationship as, mentor-mentee?
I think we have a very good working relationship, and of course you and I have been working together for over a year now. And initially when you came into the program, it's not exactly a formal program, but into the internship, you were only focused on one singular project, but then subsequently you got exposed to other aspects of the drug discovery process, and that includes translational pharmacology, regulatory affairs, drug manufacturing, assay development, and also even interaction with the FDA, etc. I think the nature of the internship is quite a complex one, because very often if you go to an academic institution for an internship, your internship is usually confined to a singular project. You might learn some technical skills, but not so much about the industry and also the process of taking a drug out to the clinic and beyond. So I think this has been quite an interesting journey for you. And on top of that, you're a fast learner and you're putting in a lot of time into the Sanger project that we work on together. And I would say, I don't know about you, but I feel that the Sanger project is a very emotional and also deep impact project, because it is a disease that has no cure.
Yeah,
and we were able
to influential.
Yeah, and we're able to make a small difference in someone's life.
Yeah. And that has been my favorite part of our internship, has been the expansion and the variety of topics that we've got to take some time and really dive into. I have been exposed to so many more things than I might have been exposed to if I had a professor who was only interested in one subject and continuing their research. We started with a project on the microbiome, and so I already learned a lot more about that than I might have otherwise. And then, like you said, when we started working on Sanger's, that was a huge step up. Working with rare diseases like that, I have never encountered anything like that before in the process of understanding one.
And perhaps I should say a word or two about Sanger so your audience can know what we're talking about.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so Sanger is a rare disease. There are only 44 patients in the world, and there is currently no treatment for it. So this is a genetic disorder which affects the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of any cells in the body. I was approached by a contact about April and May kind of time frame last year, and this is a family in the UK that has a son with Sanger syndrome. And usually patients with Sanger syndromes don't survive past their 5th birthday. There are ways that we can potentially use existing drugs to mitigate some of the symptoms. So Alina and I actually worked for quite a long time to compile a list of treatment and also dietary supplements that might help this little boy, and subsequently this little boy's family located other Sanger patients around the world, and they formed their own network. And after we compiled the list of information, Alina actually presented that data to the families and also the physicians. So it was a very
I was pretty nervous.
yeah.
It was my first time ever doing anything like that, so it was an amazing experience to be able to present research. And we worked on it a little bit. We practiced a few times. I needed that practice, and I think it really showed through in it. We were able to provide the family with a little bit of answers. A lot of the information they already knew themselves, though, so made it a little easier trying to explain things.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's good that the physicians were there too, so they just want to make sure that they have covered all the bases. And of course, there were things that we shared with them that they were not aware of before. So I'm very happy that we were able to help just in the little ways that we could.
Absolutely. I think about that all the time, being able to give them some answers. It really made me feel good and made me love the research process even more than I already did. So what are 3 aspects that mentor-mentee relationship kind of capitalizes on? A mentor should act as a consultant, a counselor, and a cheerleader. And I think you do all 3 of those really well. I know that at any time... You're welcome. I know that at any time in the day I can reach out to you. You're helping me with my med school application, giving me some guidelines, some tips there that I think will really kind of set me above other students. And then a cheerleader. You're always motivating me, especially when I feel a little down and when I, take a quiz and I'm like, oh man, that didn't go as I wanted it to. I feel like you're always there to kind of lift me up, and I am beyond thankful for that. Yeah,
it's easy to lose sight of what you can do in this long journey. I've been there myself, and during my PhD years, there were times when I questioned myself and wondered if I could do it. Yeah. So it's tough to go through the process with someone who tells you that you can do it because they've been through that before and they understand how you feel during that process.
Exactly. And there are also many opportunities that the mentorship relationship is able to provide for students, like networking. You also helped me set up my CV and my resume in a way that I would have never thought to do it. Practicing interview skills, presentation skills, introduced me to different databases and information. You were the one who told me about PubMed and the NCIB and clinicaltrials.gov and a lot of other things that I probably wouldn't have even been introduced to in my undergrad at all.
Yeah, a lot of that research skill is not taught in school. And unless you work in the industry, you wouldn't be exposed to certain information or certain tools that you would be otherwise. Again, the internship is something that the mentee has to put in as much work as they want to get out of it. If you were just interested in writing a paper, that's one thing, but you were actually looking for a cure for a disease or the mitigation for disease. So, of course, the areas that we venture into is different than someone who just wants to do a summer internship and get a letter of recommendation.
I was going into it with a mindset of I want to learn. I know that David has the experiences and he's in a position in life that I want to be at eventually. So like you said, you get out of it whatever you put into it. I also met a few of your coworkers, and being introduced to them and speaking with scientists on a regular basis was something that I'd never done before also. And that kind of put me in a professional mindset. It taught me how to behave in a professional setting. It taught me how to interact with people who, are a little above me. And that was an experience.
Oh, don't sell yourself short. To be honest with you, I think a lot of the inputs were something that I would expect from my peers. Just because someone has a couple of letters behind the names doesn't mean that they are up there and above you. Sometimes I think people's intellect and also their ability to do a job well is not governed by how much training they have. It's really this innate drive to do the best you can in any situation.
That's very important. Thank you for that. So if you were to give a mentor tip, what are some things that students should look for in a good mentor?
Yeah, I think a mentor should be someone that has empathy for the students, someone who has been there, done that, and suffered through it, and they know exactly what the students are going through and help them through those bumps. And by the same token, sometimes I hear people say they want to work for some famous professor who got a PhD at the age of 18 or something. And honestly, those are probably not the best mentors because they can probably think 5 steps ahead of you and skip steps in between.
Yeah.
So these are not the best people to explain to you how things work. And they would also not have the understanding of the struggle that you are going through. Another thing that I would look for in a mentor is not someone who just want to use me as an extra pair of hands in the lab. I don't just want to come in, learn about an assay and be an extra pair of hands to run the assay, but I also want to know how the business works and how to apply for grants, how to do research beyond the lab. Those are all very important aspects of the internship. And another thing that I would look for is actually the ability to interact with people that are outside the group. And I'm not talking about just regularly networking with other people in the other labs, but also the ability to present your data. As you found out firsthand, the first time you present to a professional group of people, you were quite nervous. But again, it's something that you kind of get used to, and it's all part of the learning experience.
Yeah, watching you was what that was about. You're very comfortable doing things like that in all the years that you've done it. A lot of it was just trying to regurgitate what I saw, so...
Fake it until you make it.
Exactly. I was just trying to fake it until I could do it myself.
How do you know I'm not faking it?
That's true. Maybe you're just a lot better at faking it than I am. I'll work on that. Things that I look for in a good mentor is someone who's very patient. I know you've noticed I ask a lot of questions and I'm someone who has to understand it. And so someone who's willing to take the time and really explain things to me and make sure that we're on the same page with topics. I also look for someone who has the availability, who has the time to give, because along with patience, someone who has that time to donate to you and can really sit down and take the time to bestow their knowledge onto you. Along with that is communication. Someone that you can talk to easily, someone who is willing to understand where you're coming from, someone that you can email and you don't have to worry about bothering them.
So I'm actually in a different situation as an academic professor in the sense that I have always been giving seminars in both at the university and also at the institute about career path and also various concepts in pharmacology, etc. The drug discovery process. So in many sense, I've been mentoring other postdocs and grad students already. So this is something that I do. I mean, it's not part of my job description, but there's something that I enjoy doing on the side.
Yeah, that you have a passion for, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is as close to being a professor I can come without having to apply for grants on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So this is something that I enjoy doing. Plus, having gone through the process myself, I know how hard it is to actually find your footing in this career. So I want to help as many people as possible.
So David, the other half of that, is there any that might make a mentor bad or some things that we should look out for?
Yeah, that's a very important question actually, because a lot of students tend to look at any professors as a good mentor. The reality is anybody with those 3 letters behind their name doesn't make them any more superior than you are just because they've been around for longer than you have been, So in the past, I have encountered quite a few bosses, and I guess you can call them my mentor, that I wouldn't consider them role models, and I tend to do the exact opposite of what they said or done. And some of these people might have a lot of scientific knowledge or they've been around the business for a long time, but I really don't like the way they handle certain situations, or I don't like the way they treat people. And my main advice, I guess, is to know yourself before you go and get a mentor, because if you don't know who you are, you can easily be influenced by other people you encounter in life. And I can tell you that I have worked in a particular location where everybody was like a carbon copy on the mentor, and the boss was not exactly the nicest human being you can encounter. And as a result, this person created a whole bunch of clones of himself, which are not the best type of human beings I want to work with. So just be very careful. Don't be influenced by someone just because they have some fancy title. Just know yourself and know right from wrong before you go into any situation.
Those kind of people you could still learn from. You can take their bad aspects and decide to do the 100% opposite, like you said in the beginning.
Yeah. And actually, I've done exactly that on numerous occasions. And sometimes you can learn from them as a bad example. And you just pass the lesson on to other people.
So I know I was in a unique position where I had your wife Aseli as a professor, and she kind of directed me over to you because she knew I was interested in biology and a career like this. So how would you suggest a student who doesn't have that avenue approach the subject of asking someone to be their mentor?
I think from an academic environment, it is easy to find a summer job in a lab, especially if you're willing to do it without pay, because there are always projects that professors are trying to jumpstart or get additional data to support a publication, and postdocs or grad students might be all tied up with some other projects. But with an industrial internship, it's a little bit more challenging because there are some legal requirements, such as you have to sign confidentiality agreements. You also have to have some kind of payment because, as I found out the hard way, you cannot just have an intern. You either have to pay them financially or give them college credits. But however, it's not impossible if you pay attention. There are companies such as Pfizer and even Novartis have summer internships for a lot of the students. The key here is to look early. You don't want to start looking for an internship in June or July, but start looking in maybe April or May.
Probably even sooner too,
Yeah, and that's really the best way to go about this.
So as we wrap up here, is there any last advice you'd like to give to students as they are either going through their college career or as they're entering the workforce?
The best advice I can give is you really get out as much as you put in. In your case, when we work on the Sanger syndrome, you put in a lot of work, and as a result, the project actually came to a good fruition, and we're able to present the finding to people who are actually affected by the disease and also to the physicians. So that was very impactful. In many ways, that actually changed the way you feel about the work. It's not just work anymore.
Yeah, seeing the end goal.
It's a mission. But of course, finding the right mentor is part of the equation as well. And landing a good project is also another tricky part, because some projects are not as interesting and maybe not as impactful. I know a lot of professors would not agree with me. Yeah, and keep an open mind. The outcome of the internship might not be something that will stimulate you to go into the next step in your career. It might actually talk you out of doing a career in this field.
True, yeah.
That is quite all right, because you invalidated a target, right?
And that's the point, is to figure out where you fit in and where you don't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your insights, and hopefully some students will listen to this and understand better. I appreciate your time.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
In the next episode of STEMology, one of my professors at UMKC agreed to discuss some frequently asked questions that high school students have when they're first introduced to college. Dr. Tammy Welcher, an advisor and teaching professor at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, has taken questions from real students who have real concerns. And we plan to tackle as many questions as possible. If you have some time, go ahead and send me your questions, and who knows, they might air in future episodes. Be sure to subscribe and share this episode, especially to students in high school and ones who are new to college. And as you all know by now, you can always reach out to me at stemologyssg@gmail.com. There's our Facebook page, Instagram at the Stemology Podcast, or Twitter at stemologyssg. Thank you for listening to our 14th episode of STEMology, a Young Scientist Survival Guide. Tune in with me, Alina Adams, for episode 15. Attention, high school students. See you next time.